guys, welcome back to another epic week. Man, I hope your week has been epic, right? We have talked the last week about what epic means. Epic means huge, amazing, huge. Wait, I already said that. Anyway, epic means really, really big, really amazing. Well, today our story has to do with a mighty army, a very strong fortress, and even some serious destruction. Today's story can be found in the book of Joshua at the end of chapter 5. The Israelites were exhausted. They had just gone through the wilderness for 40 years. That's a really, really long time. But their march was over, and they were standing in the land God had promised them. But there was one issue. There was a town named Jericho that stood in their way. You know, Moses had led them all this way through the wilderness, but he had just died. And a new leader named Joshua had taken his place. As they entered into this new land, they came up to a fortified city. That's a city that had walls built all around it. This city would have to be captured and taken if the Israelites were going to possess this land. But this was the city of Jericho. It had huge walls all the way around that no man had ever been able to conquer. When the people of Israel saw these walls, they were a little overwhelmed. And when the people of Jericho saw the Israelites coming, they shut up all the gates and the doors so no one could come in and no one could leave. The Israelites were very discouraged. This looked like it was going to be impossible. How could God come through this time? But Joshua had an encounter that was going to change this impossible situation. Joshua saw a man with a sword one morning, and he approached the man and he said, "Are you a friend or are you a foe?" The man explained he was the commander of the Lord's army. Like Moses that we learned about last week with the burning bush, Joshua was told to take off his shoes because he was on holy ground. The Lord explained to Joshua that Jericho belonged to the Israelites. All they had to do was obey him and it would be theirs. Joshua listened. Were they going to use catapults or ladders or even battering rams to get through those walls? God had a different plan, and Joshua obeyed. We are learning about obedience today. The next day, the army set out for battle. They were following Joshua's lead. He had told them to make no war cries. In fact, he even told them that they couldn't talk. Could you imagine going out for war and not even saying a word? Nothing. But instead of attacking, they just walked around. They walked around all the walls, and then they went back to camp. The next day, they met again, and they thought, today's the day. They were given the same instructions. No war cries, no talking. And again, they marched all the way around, and they went back to camp. The men were confused. Had Joshua lost it? But they didn't know that Joshua also had questioned, why can't we attack? But this wasn't God's plan. Joshua might not have understood, but he was obedient. The third day came. Still the same thing, march around and go home. The fourth day, the fifth day, the sixth day, the same thing. But then the seventh day came. The army marched around the city, but they didn't stop one time. They marched around the city, totally quiet, 7 times. Imagine how scary that had to be to the city of Jericho, watching this huge army march around in complete silence. All they could hear was the soldiers' feet marching around 7 times. You know that had to be very intimidating. But the 7th time around, Joshua gave the command. He told the priests to blow the trumpet, and he tells the army to shout. The Lord had given them the town. As they shouted, the walls started shaking. And as they kept on shouting, they began to crumble. God's plan, even though it was hard to understand, worked perfectly. The army had won the victory. All because one man, Joshua, was obedient to God even when it didn't make sense. You know, it's the same for us. We may never conquer a city, but we can face all kinds of moments that God's commands won't make sense. Or maybe we won't feel like being obedient. But like Joshua, if we choose obedience, we will experience the epic things God has for us. So let's take a look here. I've got some vinegar. Woo! Man, I got some vinegar and I got some dirty pennies here. I hear that you can take vinegar and I can take my dirty penny and I can clean it. But it's not doing anything. But it says if I do this... Oh, hold on. Wait a minute. Let me read the instructions. Let me see. Oh, hey. It says that I'm supposed to put salt in the vinegar. Let me put a little bit of salt in there. Maybe it would help if I read the instructions, huh? All right, so let me stir this around a little bit. Let me stir this around and get it all good and mixed up. Okay, now let me it says to put the pennies into the mixture. All right, let's see here. Oh my, oh my goodness. Wow, take a look at this. Look at how shiny that penny is. Man, you know, this is kind of like us. So we are like the vinegar. Yeah, we smell sometimes, but that's not where I'm going. We're kind of like the vinegar, and the salt is like the Holy Spirit. So we can try to be obedient, but did you see what I did without any salt in it? It didn't get very far. It didn't do anything. It wasn't very productive. But whenever I allowed the Holy Spirit or the salt to come in and I was obedient, man, it really got the job done. You know, we can try to be obedient in our own abilities, but it's really hard to obey sometimes. You know, it's much easier when we ask God for help. When we obey or we follow God's instructions, those hard and dark times will work themselves out. And like this penny, it will end up shining bright. And don't you want to shine bright for Jesus? So we need to learn to be obedient. Even when it's hard, even when we really don't want to, we need to learn to be obedient. And we will obey God and shine bright for Jesus. See you guys.